The Middle East theater is entering a phase of operational transition. According to open-source intelligence and Reuters, on April 16, 2026, Israel has officially initiated ceasefire negotiations on the Lebanon front. This is a development that interrupts the recent loop of high-intensity kinetic conflict. On the ground, all concessions are dictated by logistical supply chains, not political will. After months of being bogged down in a war of attrition, both the Israel Defense Forces, the IDF, and Hezbollah have reached their operational limits. The depletion rate of the Israeli Air Force's precision-guided munitions, or PGM stockpiles, has skyrocketed. Furthermore, the Iron Dome and David's Sling air defense networks constantly face the risk of saturation. Meanwhile, the adversary's ammunition supply lines have also been severely severed. From a strategic perspective, what exactly are we witnessing? A geopolitical pivot, or merely a tactical pause? Is this a surface-level agreement designed for reconstitution, consolidating fire support lines and reloading assets before the chain of command orders an even more brutal campaign? Let's decode this situation report, or SITREP. No ceasefire stems from goodwill. It is the inevitable consequence of logistical exhaustion. Beneath the diplomatic facade, the reality on the ground reflects a hard truth. Both the Israel Defense Forces, the IDF, and Hezbollah are rapidly approaching the limits of their operational reach. On the South Lebanon front, the Israeli Air Force, the IAF, has relentlessly deployed bunker-buster munitions, such as the GBU-31J dam, aiming to neutralize the adversary's command and control, or C2 systems, subterranean networks, and supply chains. However, Hezbollah's most severe strategic risk lies on the home front. A Lebanese state experiencing macroeconomic collapse simply cannot underwrite a total war. Internal pressure from Beirut has cornered Hezbollah. Sustaining this intensity of conflict threatens to completely fracture its civil-military relations. Across the front line, the IDF's Northern Command is similarly bogged down in a war of attrition. The prolonged mobilization of reserve forces and the continuous operation of a multi-layered air defense grid are generating a highly unfavorable cost-exchange ratio. Employing Tamir, Iron Dome, or Stunner, David's Sling, interceptors against low-cost munitions is severely eroding the defense budget. Furthermore, the pressure stemming from the tactical evacuation of tens of thousands of northern residents compels the Israeli cabinet to urgently re-establish a secure buffer zone. The current situation represents a classic culminating point of operations. Commanders on both sides recognize a hard reality. A decisive victory, achieved solely through firepower, is currently unattainable without risking the complete collapse of their respective national structures. When kinetic operations fail to materialize political objectives, yielding strategic space to the negotiation table becomes an imperative. In the Middle East battle space, every kinetic conflict or ceasefire agreement is dictated by great power competition. The South Lebanon front has never been a localized dispute between the IDF and Hezbollah. At its core, it is a classic proxy war. First, we must accurately assess the pressure emanating from Washington. This is not pacifism, but rather the art of coercive diplomacy. The Pentagon and the White House calculate clearly a full-scale Israeli campaign on the northern flank would trigger a regional blowout, directly threatening vital sea lines of communication, or SLOCs, and igniting a global energy crisis. Washington forcing the parties to de-escalate is a strategic imperative designed to maintain the macro-geopolitical status quo. It is absolutely not a request. However, the strategic center of gravity in this chessboard is firmly rooted in Tehran. Hezbollah is not a conventional militia. It is a forward-deployed deterrent spearhead operating under the sponsorship of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps' Quds Force, or IRGCQF. Hezbollah's acceptance of negotiations clearly reflects Tehran's doctrine of force preservation. A ceasefire in this current phase is a tactical retreat aimed at reconstitution, buying time to restore ground lines of communication, or GLOCS, through the Syrian corridor and reloading precision-guided munition stockpiles ahead of future campaigns. Ultimately caught along the operational boundary, the blue line, is the UNIFIL mission. Doctrinally, the agreement will place the burden of monitoring squarely on their shoulders. However, constrained by highly restrictive rules of engagement, or ROE, and a lack of independent fire support, UNIFIL is entirely incapable of asserting control in an environment defined by asymmetric and subterranean warfare. Devoid of kinetic enforcement capabilities, UNIFIL cannot guarantee a true demilitarized zone, or DMZ, and is instead relegated to the role of a passive observer during what is likely a fleeting tactical pause. On the Lebanon front, the center of gravity for all negotiations converges on a single tactical geographic boundary, the Litani River. For the IDF General Staff, this is an absolute operational imperative. Tel Aviv is adamant about establishing a true demilitarized zone, or DMZ, forcing all of Hezbollah's combat formations and firing positions to retreat to the northern bank. The strategic objective: establish strategic depth, remove the northern civilian population from the direct line of sight of 9 M133 Kornet anti-tank guided missile, or ATGM systems, and completely neutralize the adversary's forward infantry infiltration capabilities. However, repelling troop concentrations only addresses surface-level tactical risks. The core chokepoint dictating the agreement lies in the arms control mechanism. Israel's red line is the absolute severing of the ground lines of communication, or GLOCS, resupplying Hezbollah. Whether routed through the Syrian corridor or the naval port of Beirut, the IDF demands a robust enforcement mechanism to blockade the influx of short-range ballistic missiles, or SRBMs, and next-generation loitering munitions. Absent this shield, the ceasefire serves merely as a logistical reload point for the adversary. This is the fundamental structural fault line of the treaty. A linear agreement on paper is meaningless when confronted with a non-linear battle space. Ambiguities regarding the right to a preemptive strike will be ruthlessly exploited. A single miscoordinated barrage of harassing fire, or a C-4 ISR reconnaissance UAV violating buffer zone airspace, will instantly spring the escalation trap. In a vacuum of strategic trust, even the most minor violation of the rules of engagement, or ROE, possesses the potential to demolish all diplomatic progress, thrusting the entire region back into high-intensity kinetic conflict. The Middle East battle space is a highly interconnected system. A ceasefire in Lebanon will immediately trigger a reconfiguration of theater-wide force posture. Will this operational step back create a cascading effect, forcing a drawdown along the Gaza front, or within the Houthi A2AD anti-access area denial networks in the Red Sea? Or is this purely an exercise in logistics rerouting, freezing a secondary front to mass air power for a decisive operation? Despite the diplomatic facade, kinetic reality remains the ultimate metric. The current deterrence architecture is extraordinarily fragile, primed to collapse from a single tactical miscalculation. A ceasefire is not the end state. It is merely a reconstitution phase, within an endless cycle of attritional warfare. How long will this tactical pause hold before early warning systems are triggered once again? Leave your intelligence assessment in the comments below. I am Mateo. Subscribe to the channel for ongoing global operational analyses. End of transmission.